Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Mark Phillips, co-founder of PredictIt, the stock market of politics. We're going to take a look at what traders are saying regarding CPAC, and we'll also take a look at what's happening with Murkowski. It's great to see you as always, John. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
It's good to be back, Jill.
All right, John, these are the stats that I've been waiting for because I've often asked you, well, DeSantis is the front runner. If Trump decides to throw his hat in the ring, that could really change things. And based on the data that you're seeing from predicted traders out of CPAC, it looks like we were right there.
That's right. I mean, this is Trump's party. If anybody had any doubt, you just needed to attend the CPAC conference in Texas on Sunday. It's not too different from what occurred 3 months ago at the CPAC conference in Florida. Trump walked away with the favorite on the straw poll. He got 70% of the ballots cast this weekend. And he talked a little bit about having a 2024 run. But the 70%, it's 15 points higher than the 55% support he got at the CPAC Orlando conference. That was immediately following January 6th and the events at the Capitol. But still, 80% of the 1,525 CPAC attendees casting ballots said they strongly approved of the job Trump did in the White House. So they don't not only want him to run, but they were happy with the job he did in the White House. I guess that figures. Another 10% of the delegates were somewhat approving. Now, this is a straw poll, right? What really matters is what PredictIt is saying. We're going to get to that in just a second. But DeSantis is the #2 horse in the race. And if Trump runs, according to the CPAC straw poll, DeSantis got 21% support if Trump runs. And without Trump, he gets 68%. Now, what about all the others? Pompeo, only 5%. Donald Trump Jr. and Ted Cruz neck and neck, but at 4%. And South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem at 3%. Nobody else got even 2% of the CPAC votes.
See, and this is what I find fascinating, and what I've been asking you since we had the election back in November 2020, and we knew that Trump was most likely going to throw his hat back in the ring in 2024, which he hasn't made that official yet. But for DeSantis, I mean, it doesn't matter how much he campaigns or how much support he gets, as I understand it. If Trump decides to officially run, it's game over. So really, his entire campaign hinges on what Trump does or does not do, if I understand this correctly.
Well, that's one way to look at it. That's certainly what the CPAC delegates were saying. But predicted traders have a slightly different view on this. Trump did have a bump after the Sunday straw poll, and he went up a couple of points. But DeSantis and Trump are tied at 28% as to who will get the Republican nomination 4 years from now. Now, what's really interesting is the traders have pretty much ruled out, will he file to run this year? It's just 7% odds. So if you think he's going to file, you can pick up those odds at 7 cents and make a buck if he files before December 31st. They think it's much more likely he's going to file before the end of 2023. And the outcome of that is about 39 cents and has a 90-day high of 41 cents or 41%.
Well, I mean, it's a good bet, John, 7 cents, and he's unpredictable. You never know if he gets momentum behind him.
I mean, it's bottom fishing, but there are worse ways to make a buck, and you can make a buck if you put it.
Stranger things happen.
That's the way it goes down. Now, DeSantis is a favorite for re-election for governor, right? I mean, this is surprising to some people, I think, that he's way ahead at 81% odds to be reelected governor. And Charlie Crist in Florida is just at the Democrats at 10 cents or 10%. And the only other statewide elected Democrat is the Agriculture Commissioner, Nikki Fried, who's at 9 cents entering the week. You want to talk about Murkowski in Florida?
Yes, let's talk about that.
Okay, well, so the Alaska Republican Party voted not to endorse Murkowski for the Republican nomination and instead to give it to Kelly Tshibaka, who Trump endorsed a couple weeks ago. This is pretty significant stuff when the Republican Party in a Republican state like Alaska decides not to renominate or give the endorsement to an incumbent sitting Republican. But that's the way it is. And according to The Hill, the newspaper The Hill, the margin was pretty high. It was 58-17 vote not to give the nomination to, not to give the party endorsement, I should say, to Murkowski. And you know, this comes as a result of the Trump pressure. All is not lost, but Murkowski's odds of being reelected, they fell by more than a dime, by 11 cents over the weekend, and they dropped below 50% odds for the first time since we launched this contract in mid-May. And the senators, you know, contract prices dropped almost 30% since launch. It's opened at 74 cents, went as high as 81 cents, and then to the chagrin of those predicted traders who bought at the 81 cents, it's been downhill since then. Yesterday's close price was 45 cents or 45% odds. So that for Murkowski. So that's pretty significant.
So, John, let me ask you this. And of course, this is an MSNBC, and I'm not a political expert here, but and this could be true for both sides, whether you're talking about the progressive faction with the Democrats or the Trumpian Republicans, if you will. Let's say you are a faction of the party that wants to go down a more conservative route, wants to think a little bit more independently, doesn't want to focus on some of the outlier issues that the progressives and the Trump Republicans are looking at. Are there enough people in both parties to get them refocused that way and more on, I guess, middle American issues versus one extreme side versus the other? Or is it just so bifurcated that that third party option, if you will, is unavailable?
No, I think, you know, the question is sort of two questions, right?
Right.
The first question is there a middle that, you know, can you get elected by running to the middle? And absolutely, you can get elected by running to the middle. I mean, I think that's one of the things that Biden people will say. His detractors will say, well, he's not really conservative or he's not really liberal. But the fact of the matter is he ran very much as a moderate and, you know, positioned to the right of Bernie Sanders. Now, you know, there's a lot of room to the right of Bernie Sanders. But the fact of the matter is there is, you know, the formula for winning elections in the United States, not the nomination, but for winning the election in the United States. We're very much a centrist country. Always have been and probably will be for the foreseeable future. Your other question, though, which is there oxygen enough to support a third-party campaign? You know, in 1992 with Ross Perot, there sure was. He came in with 19% of the vote, and essentially he was the reason why Bill Clinton won that election. You know, many of those Perot votes, more Perot votes came from the Republican George Bush Sr. Than came from the Democrat Bill Clinton at the time. So there is in theory, and actually in 92 in practice, you know, there is a chance to, once you're in the 20s, you know, the high teens in the 20s, you are a viable campaign. That's not what's happened in recent elections, however. So, but to win, the dilemma for both the Democrats and the Republicans, generally speaking, and the Democrats avoided this trap, the dilemma is, to get the nomination, you have to run to the wing of the party where the activists are and where a lot of the money is. And in so doing, if you forfeit the center, it makes your election in the general election very, very tough.
That is a good point. The nomination is certainly very different than the election. A great history lesson as always with you, John. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thank you, Jill.